So how good is Casemiro actually? Is a £70 million fee for a 33-year-old worth paying, or a fee that will hurt United further down the line? And what can we learn from Mourinho and Claude Makélélé in regards to how Casemiro could be deployed in Ten Hag's system? But before I get into that, I have got a special announcement from the sponsors of today's video, OneFootball, which is now the place where on a Saturday night, if you're in the UK or Ireland, you can watch one free Italian Serie A game each weekend. As well as this, you can also use all the other football features that I've spoken about before with OneFootball. So if you are interested in watching European football, but just don't have anywhere to watch it, then you can go to the competition page linked in the description, and you can check out the free match that will be streamed this weekend. You can also watch highlights of all the Serie A games, and near live instant clips as well whilst the games are going on. And by downloading the OneFootball app, you will be helping to support the channel. Just before I start, this analysis is very stats heavy, so if you want to follow along as best possible, what you can do is open up another tab, go to FBref, and in the search bar you can just type in Casemiro's name, or any other player that I mention, and you'll see their FBref report. To see their complete FBref report, just click on complete FBref report at the top, and then you should be able to see all the metrics I'm talking about and compare them yourself. So it looks like Manchester United are finally close to securing a competent central midfield signing for the first time since probably Nemanja Matic in 2017, and it comes in the form of Real Madrid's highly decorated Brazilian destroyer Casemiro. Now I'll start off by getting the obvious concerns with the transfer out of the way, and that is that Manchester United are likely going to be splashing out a reported £60 to £70 million on a 30-year-old, 31 next year, player who is going to be on big wages, reportedly more than the current £9.5 million he currently earns at Real Madrid, suggesting that the salary will likely be in the region of £15 million per year, I would assume. It's also being reported that he's likely to sign a contract until 2026 with the option of a further year taking it to 2027, taking him to the ages of 34 or 35. Now on the surface, for any normal club this may be concerning. Signing a player in his early 30s, the age when players usually start to decline, on a long-term contract with a huge wage, but this is Manchester United, and to be honest, I'm happy they're just signing a central midfielder. And not just that, but what I would describe as a legendary defensive midfielder who is still within the argument to be the best defensive midfielder in world football. I think I'd describe Casemiro as an old school destroyer, similar to the likes of Gennaro Gattuso, Gilberto Silva, and a player I'll talk about in a bit, Claude Makélélé. I do think that he differs from modern so-called defensive midfielders, or what I prefer to refer to as deeper lying midfielders like Rodri, Joshua Kimmich and Sergio Busquets, in the sense that he's very much a ball winner first, rather than a ball progressor. Someone like Rodri is a lot more press resistant than Casemiro, and much more of a creative threat in the middle and final thirds, and just in general he's a much better progressor of the ball when it's at his feet. However, the Spaniard, while still being excellent defensively, isn't as good as Casemiro when it comes to aggressively breaking up the play with tackles and interceptions, and so it really comes down to just stylistic differences. Rodri is much more of a specialist, playing as a regista for Pep, and so I'd class Casemiro as more of an anchorman like Fabinho, who is in the side fundamentally to break up play and win the ball back, and without doubt he does this extremely well. Unlike Fred and McTominay, Casemiro is like a magnet to the ball when it enters his zone in the centre of the pitch, having the reading of the game to firstly anticipate a pass, and then the assertiveness and athleticism to without hesitation make a move to close down the player with the ball, from where he then has phenomenal tackling ability, usually leading with the outside of his boot before wrapping his right foot around the ball to then aggressively complete a sliding tackle and then win the ball back. I genuinely think that Casemiro is one of the best defensive midfield tacklers the game has ever seen. If you just watch a couple of his highlights, you'll see what I mean. Even when he seems to be positioned behind the player with the ball, he's able to recover within a second or so with an immaculate tackle to dispossess the opposition player and win the ball back. And this is a skill that United certainly don't have with McTominay or Fred in this area. And when we look at Casemiro's FBref report, we can see how good his tackling ability is. Just off the basic FBref report, we can see that he ranks in the 90th percentile for tackles and the 76th for interceptions. Now I interpret tackles and interceptions as that if a central midfielder is a more creative type like Rodri, playing in a deeper defensive midfield position, they are more likely to rely on their reading of the game in order to make interceptions to win the ball back. However, due to either a lack of physicality, athleticism or tackling ability, these players may record lower overall tackles. However, players like Casemiro and Didi, Kante, Roy Keane, Gattuso, etc., who are animals in the centre of the pitch, are able to rely more on their tackling ability to win the ball back. But the fact that we can see that Casemiro is recording a high level of output for both interceptions and also tackles shows just how good a ball winner he is. And you also have to factor in that he is playing at Real Madrid, who average a higher possession rate, so just naturally he's going to have less opportunities to perform these defensive actions, and so he is a high quantity defensive actions kind of midfielder. When we delve further into Casemiro's complete FB ref report, over the past 365 days, he ranks in the 76th percentile for percentage of dribblers tackled, whereas Fred ranks in the 21st percentile for this metric, whilst McTominay actually ranks fairly impressively, sitting in the 93rd percentile. But the problem with him defensively is more his decision making, as his pressures in the middle and defensive third sit around the 45th to 60th percentile, and his successful pressure percentage is down in the 24th percentile. Casemiro, on the other hand, unlike McTominay, is able to combine his ability to tackle dribblers with a greater understanding of where and how he should be positioned, as he ranks in the 97th percentile for his successful pressures percentage. And I think this does sum up the improvement that Casemiro would bring defensively to United's midfield. Fred is a fantastic pressing midfielder, ranking in the mid-90s for successful pressures in the defensive and middle thirds, understanding when to push out and how to position himself, but he lacks the one-on-one defending ability when a dribbler is running at him, whereas McTominay is the other way around. Casemiro, on the other hand, however, would bring both elements to United's midfield, and so we should expect to see a significant defensive improvement, regardless of who partners Casemiro in that double pivot. Now, Casemiro will need to adjust to Ten Hag's out-of-possession system, which could be something to look out for. Under Ancelotti at Real Madrid and Zidane before him, Casemiro was used at the base of a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2 system, where the side would press quite passively. Maybe they would occasionally press aggressively during the opposition's build-up phase in their defensive third, but after the press was beaten, Madrid would fall back into a pretty deep defensive block. When we look at Casemiro's tackles and pressures in certain areas of the pitch, we can see how this style plays out statistically. He sits in the 85th percentile for pressures in a defensive third, but only in the 6th and the 13th for pressures in the middle and final third respectively, whilst he sits in the 98th percentile for tackles in the defensive third, but that goes down to the 64th percentile for the middle third and the 39th for the final third, showing that in Real Madrid's system, Casemiro's defensive actions are mainly limited to the deeper parts of the pitch. However, I think he would be able to transition to Ten Hag's higher pressing style, where he would have to push higher up the pitch and look to engage players when they receive the ball with their back to goal a lot more than he needs to do at Real Madrid, where predominantly his tackling and pressing opportunities do come when the player is already turning and dribbling towards him. But the Brazilian has a reading of the game, positional awareness, aggression and standing tackling ability to adapt to this style, so I don't see it being much of an issue. But this isn't to say that he doesn't offer anything in possession. I would argue that he's still significantly better than both McTominay and Fred on the ball. Yes, he does like to keep it simple at the base of the Real Madrid midfield, often preferring to continue the circulation of the ball rather than attempting penetrating passes too often, but that is largely down to the fact that he's playing alongside central midfielders like Modric and Kroos, two of the best creative passers the game has ever seen, and so his ability to move the ball on quickly and keep it simple in fact showcases his high football IQ a lot more than anything else. If we look at his FB ref report, we can see that he ranks fairly decently for progressive passes, sitting in the 69th percentile, but he also sits in the 83rd for passes into the final third, which I think is a much more important stat, as that is really where United struggle when the opposition have dropped off into a deep compact defensive shape, with United controlling possession in the middle third, looking to thread passes between the lines to move the ball from the middle to the final third to then create chances. He does have the ability to clip a pass over the top of the back line, play a quick first time pass around the corner, or switch play with long raking passes out wide, and I think we will see him do this a lot more at Manchester United than he has done at Real Madrid, because there will be a greater creative burden on him in possession, with him playing alongside Fred instead of Modric and Kroos. He doesn't solve all of United's midfield problems, as in possession he doesn't have the press resistancy of someone like Frankie de Jong, who can receive the ball under pressure in the defensive third and swivel out, driving the ball forward and in doing so break through the opposition's press, and thus allow Manchester United to exploit the increased space in the centre of the pitch. Casemiro is not this kind of player. Yes, he certainly can do this on occasion, and I would much rather him dropping into that deep connector position between the two centre-backs and Fred or McTominay, but ideally United would have brought in another central midfielder to perform this task. what could have happened in the build-up phase is Casemiro acts as a player to pull away players from that zone, allowing his partner in the double pivot, preferably Garner at the moment, but ideally someone like De Jong, to drop deep and become the reducer temporarily. In the middle third, Casemiro would hold a deeper position behind the ball at the base of the triangle in midfield and at the point of the one of the two centre-backs. In the attacking third, rather than pushing to join the attack, he could hold a deeper position instead, ready to engage the opposition attacker and be the first line of defence should there be a turnover and the opposition look to counter. Casemiro would provide the defensive protection that no other United player could provide, so we'll likely see United being able to win the ball back a lot quicker and sustain attacks in the opposition half, having a very similar effect to the one that Fernandinho had at Pep's Manchester City. In this sense, Casemiro's role would be a modern version of the Makelele role, named of course after Claude Makelele. Makelele started out as a versatile midfielder at Nantes in 1991, playing as an attacking or box-to-box midfielder, but also as a wide attacker as well. However, as his career progressed, coaches assumed that he lacked the talent and the height to play at the top level in most of these positions, lacking the ball-carrying ability of a midfield playmaker like Zidane, the trickery of a winger like Figo, or the vision of a playmaker like Guti. So Real Madrid manager Vicente Del Bosque would utilise Makelele as an unadventurous defensive midfielder between the defensive and midfield lines, playing alongside Galacticos like Zidane, Figo, Ronaldo and Steve McManaman. It was obvious that Makelele would never be the star of the team, but could be an incredibly important cog in the system. Makelele was the glue of the Galacticos side, covering fullbacks and plugging gaps in the midfield when they appeared, and he would then eventually move to Chelsea in 2003, where he would primarily be used in the first season in a 4-4-2 alongside Frank Lampard, or at the base of a 4-4-2 diamond under Claudio Ranieri, but when Mourinho came in 2004, he would switch to a 4-3-3 and use Makelele at the base in that anchorman role, which would later be named after the French midfielder. Like Casemiro, Makelele was an energetic, physical, ball-winning midfielder who would sit behind the play, acting as a deep connector in possession, but sitting behind the ball in possession, breaking up attacks and protecting the back two of Carvalho and Terry. And Makelele was an integral part of what would become arguably the best Premier League defence of all time, from 04 to 06, conceding just 15 goals in the 04-05 season, and then just 22 goals in the 05-06 season. So overall, I think that like Makelele, Casemiro will prove to be a fantastic signing for Manchester United. Yes, they are overpaying with a £70 million fee for a 30-year-old, which is extremely expensive, but Ten Hag will be getting one of the best defensive midfielders of all time, still in his prime and likely have a similar longevity to Fernandinho. So I think we could see Casemiro being world class or at least top level as a ball winner in this United side for the next 4, maybe even 5 seasons. I will do a video on how I would set up United's midfield, not just for this season, but in the mid to long term as well, looking at potential players like Milinkovic-Savic and Frankie de Jong who could be brought in, and whether Ten Hag could shift to a midfield diamond with Casemiro at the base. So if you do want to see that video, subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, give the video a like, and check out some of my other videos in the description below.